They're not arguing with you. They're rewriting your reality. Vanessa is sitting across from her partner after another confusing argument. She brought up something that bothered her, something clear, something specific. But somehow 30 minutes later, she's the one apologizing, and she can't even remember how it happened. The conversation twisted. Her concern became an attack. Her feelings became an overreaction. And now, she's questioning whether she was wrong to bring it up at all. She leaves the room feeling crazy. Like maybe she's the problem. Like maybe she's imagining things that aren't real. Here's what manipulation actually looks like. It's not always obvious. It's not someone twirling a villain mustache plotting against you. Most of the time, it's subtle. So subtle that you don't realize it's happening until you're already tangled in it. And by then, you're doubting yourself too much to trust what you know. Manipulators work by destabilizing your sense of reality. They make you question your memory, your perception, your feelings, and they do it in ways that seem reasonable on the surface. So if you call it out, you look like the unstable one, like the person who's overreacting or being dramatic. And that's exactly the point. One of the clearest signs is when someone denies things they absolutely said or did. You bring up a conversation you had last week. They look at you like you're making it up. I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. And they say it with such confidence that you start to wonder. Maybe you did misunderstand. Maybe you're confused. Maybe it didn't happen the way you thought. But it did. You're not confused. What's happening is they're gaslighting you. They're deliberately distorting the truth to make you doubt yourself. And the more you doubt yourself, the more power they have. Because if you can't trust your own memory, you have to rely on theirs. And theirs is whatever serves them in the moment. This is especially effective if it happens repeatedly. One instance, you might brush off. When it keeps happening, when you're constantly being told you're wrong about things you know you're right about, you start to internalize it. You start thinking maybe there is something wrong with your perception. Maybe you can't trust yourself. And that's when they've got you. Another tactic is the guilt trip. Manipulators at making you feel responsible for their emotions. You set a boundary, you say no to something, and suddenly they're hurt, disappointed, let down, and it's all your fault. They didn't ask you to feel guilty. They didn't say the words you should feel bad. But the implication is there, heavy and unavoidable. And here's the thing. Guilt is a powerful motivator. Most people will do almost anything to avoid feeling like they've hurt someone. So manipulators exploit that. They position themselves as the victim of your boundaries, of your needs, of your refusal to accommodate them. And you end up backing down, not because you want to, but because the guilt is unbearable. But real relationships don't work that way. Healthy people can know without making you feel like a villain. They might be disappointed. Sure. They don't weaponize that disappointment. They don't make you responsible for managing their emotional reactions to your boundaries. There's also this thing where manipulators play dumb. You bring up a legitimate issue, something that hurt you, something that needs to be addressed, and they act like they have no idea what you're talking about. I don't understand why you're upset. Can you explain it again? And you explain. And they still don't get it, and you explain again differently. And still nothing clicks. There's a truth they understand. They just don't want to take responsibility. So they make you work harder and harder to explain something that shouldn't need explaining. And you're so exhausted from trying to make them understand that you drop. And the issue never gets resolved. This is strategic confusion. They're not actually confused. They're making you do all the emotional labor until you're too tired to keep fighting. And then they get to move on like nothing happened. Like you were just making a big deal out of nothing. Another red flag is when someone isolates you from other perspectives. They subtly discourage you from talking to friends or family about your relationship. They don't understand us. They'll just make things worse. This is between you and me. And it sounds reasonable, private even, like they're protecting the relationship. But what they're actually doing, getting off your access to reality checks. Because if you talk to someone else, that might say, wait, that's not okay. That's not normal. And the manipulator can't have that. They need you in a bubble where their version of reality is the only version you hear. So, they frame side-in input as interference, as drama, as people trying to ruin what you have. And you start keeping things to yourself, not because you want to, but because you've been trained to see honesty with others as betrayal. Manipulators also moving target. You try to address a problem, and instead of dealing with it, they bring up something you did wrong. Something from last month, last year, something completely unrelated, and suddenly the conversation is about your flaws instead of the issue you raised. This is deflection. They're shifting the focus away from their behavior and onto yours. And if you take the bait, if you start defending yourself against their accusations, the original issue disappears. You never get resolution. You never get acknowledgement. You just end up in a different argument entirely. And this keeps you off balance. You can never pin anything down, can never get a straight answer, can never hold them accountable. Because they're always redirecting, always shifting, always making it about something else. There's also the silent treatment. You upset them or they claim you did, and suddenly they go cold. They stop talking, stop engaging. And the silence is suffocating. It's not just quiet, it's punishment, it's control. It's them withholding connection until you cave, until you apologize for something you might not have even done, until you do whatever it takes to get them to be warm again. And it works. Because humans are wired for connection. Being shut out, even temporarily, triggers deep fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. So you scramble to fix it. You take on blame that isn't yours. You do whatever ends the silence, and they've trained you. Now they know exactly how to control you. But the silent treatment isn't communication, it's manipulation. Healthy people talk through conflict. They don't shut down and ice you out. They don't use emotional as a weapon. Another manipulators do is love bombing followed devaluation. In the beginning, they're incredible, attentive, affectionate. They make you feel like the most important person in the world, and you think, this is it, this. But then, once they know you're invested, the energy shifts, the warmth disappears, the criticism starts, and you're left confused, trying to get back to how things were, trying to figure out what you did wrong. But you didn't do anything wrong. This is the cycle. They build up so you act, and then they tear you down so you'll work harder to please them. So you'll chase the initial high, and the whole time you're thinking the problem is you, that if you could just be better, things would go back to how they were. But that version of them was the manipulation. The current version is who they actually are. Here's what people don't understand about manipulators. They're not always malicious. Some of them genuinely don't see what they're doing as wrong. They learn these patterns as survival mechanisms, maybe in childhood, maybe in past relationships. And now it's just how they operate. They manipulate because it works, because it keeps them safe or in control, or protected from vulnerability. But that doesn't make it okay. Understanding why someone manipulates doesn't mean you have to tolerate it. You can have compassion for their history and still protect yourself from their behavior. And protecting yourself starts with trusting your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. If you're constantly confused, constantly apologizing, constantly questioning your own reality, you're likely dealing with manipulation, and no amount of explaining, understanding, or accommodating is going to fix it. because the problem isn't you. The hardest part is that manipulators are often very good at seeming reasonable. They can make you look like the problem if you try to call them out. They can twist your words, your feelings, your concerns until you're the bad guy. And that keeps you trapped. Because if you can't even name what's happening without being villainized, how do you escape it? You start by documenting. Write things down, not to use against them, but to have a record you can check when they deny reality. When they say something didn't happen, you can look back and see that it did. This isn't about building a case, it's about anchoring yourself to the truth when someone is actively trying to unanchor you. You also need outside perspective. Talk to someone you trust, someone who isn't involved, someone who can reflect back what's actually happening without the distortion. Because when you're in it, when you're constantly being wrong, you lose the ability to see clearly. You need someone to remind you that your reality is valid. And at some point, you might need to walk away. Not every manipulator can be reasoned with. Not every relationship can be saved. Some people are so deeply entrenched in these patterns they can't change, or they won't. And staying just means more of your reality gets eroded. More of yourself gets lost. You're not responsible for fixing someone who's breaking you. You're not obligated to stay in a dynamic that makes you question your sanity. You're allowed to choose yourself, to choose clarity, to choose peace, even if that means walking away from someone you care about. Manipulation thrives in silence, in confusion, in isolation. So the antidote is clarity. It's speaking up, trusting yourself. It's refusing to let someone else's version of reality overwrite your own. And it's surrounding yourself with people who make you feel crazy for having feelings, needs, and boundaries. You know what was said, you know what you felt, and no one gets to tell you otherwise. Not with confidence, not with gaslighting, not with guilt. Your reality is yours, and protecting it isn't selfish, it's survival.